Actually, I did want to start by talking about Scott a little bit. Pretty early on in the church, he, yeah, not in a bad way. Like early on in the church, he's always opened up the space and said, if any of you feel like you have something you want to say, just tell me and I'll do it. So I stored that away and I thought, oh, if I have something good to say, then I'll tell him. And finally, the day came, and hopefully, this is something good to say. And not only did he like allow me to do this, but he actually helped me craft a sermon. I didn't go to seminary; I've never done this before, so um, I did. I just think it's cool that we have a pastor that does that, and like not only opens up the space, but invested in me to talk today. So thanks, Scott. Thanks everybody for coming. So today I wanted to talk about pursuit, desire. We're no stranger to this. We're in Los Angeles, and many of us came here to pursue a career in film, which I'm one of those people. And sort of things change, I guess. But I think the idea of pursuit is universal. We all want something, and it can be something as simple as like, oh, I really want a PlayStation for Christmas, to something as like, I want healing, or I want a family and kids, or like the career thing. So today we're going to talk about, or I'm going to tell you about a time in my life when the thing I wanted the most was a girlfriend. Um, the problem was I wasn't very good at dating. Um, it was like the end of high school, beginning of college, and I worked at Baskin Robbins at the time. And my sister's here, and she worked there with me, so maybe she knows some of this story. And I remember being in the back of Baskin Robbins, which was a really good job, by the way, still one of the best jobs I ever had. And I remember counting all the girls that I had liked or pursued since my last successful relationship and getting to the number 7, being like, wow, like 7 girls and none of them has worked out. Like, this just sucks. And so when you get to a place like that, you start thinking things like, oh, maybe God like doesn't want me to get married. Like maybe this is not part of the plan, even though I'm young and just thinking catastrophic things. And so um, also when you're in a place like that, you kind of maybe open your arms a little wider than they should go. You grasp for things that you shouldn't go for. So I ended up uh, lowering my standards a tad and going for a gal that I worked with at Baskin Robbins. Not there's anything wrong with her. She was a great girl. Like she was fine. It was just a couple years younger. We were kind of in different places and going in different directions. So probably not the best person to pursue. But I pursued her anyway. And what that looked like at that time, it was when the Polar Express in 3D was coming out. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was one of the first like good 3D movies, like well made. And there was all these radio ads on it, and we were working together one night, and probably like 3 times in the night, an ad had come up for it, and she said, "Oh, I really want to see that movie." And finally, by like the end of the shift, I got up enough courage to be like, "Ah, maybe we could go together. Like maybe I could take you or something." And she said yes. And so I was like, yes, date number 1 in the bag. Like whether or not she knew it was a date, I don't really know. I did get her to go to dinner beforehand, so maybe that said something. And so for dinner, I wanted to go all out. So we went to Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. With which to you like Los Angelinos is like, oh Rick, come on, like Bubba Gump's, that's like the chain restaurant. Oh, take her somewhere local. But in Charleston, South Carolina, Bubba Gump's is like, dang Rick, like how much they pay you at Baskin Robbins? Like you're like you're going all out for this girl. So dinner went well, and I didn't say anything too stupid. And then we get to the movie theater, and it's sold out. This was before the age of buying movies online and assigned seats and like ArcLight and stuff. Or we don't even have ArcLight in South Carolina. So we get there, and it's like sold out. And so, I pretended I was bummed. I was like, oh man, like this. Ah, but we could go next week maybe. So then she agreed to go again. So I was like, yes, date number 2. So I couldn't afford Bubba Gumps twice, so the second date we go to Taco Bell. And this is, which for me is pretty nice, right? If you know me. So we go to Taco Bell, and this is an example of how terrible I was at dating. I just said like weird things, and we were at Taco Bell, and I was like, oh, you like Taco Bell, huh? And she goes, yeah, I think it's pretty good. And I was like, I'm glad. And she said, why? And what I was thinking was like, because I love Taco Bell and I want my future wife to love Taco Bell, and you're the leading candidate for that right now. But there's like no way I'm gonna say that on a second date. I wasn't that stupid. Coincidentally or incidentally, my wife does love Taco Bell, so uh, my high school, college age self would be proud of me. So we go to the movie and things are going fine. And then, after the movie, we like work together and flirt a little bit at work, and I'd give her rides home. We were talking on the phone, and I was like, this is going great. Like, I'm going to have a girlfriend. This is awesome. And then one night I get home from work and I'm feeling good, and I'm like, I'm going to give her a call. We'll see, just to chat, because that's what people who like each other do. And she drops the bomb on me. She says those words that no man ever wants to hear. I just want to be friends. Yeah. So I was literally speechless because I had thought things were going so well up to that point. And we ended the conversation, and I was so sad that I went straight to my guitar and I wrote an emo song called Defeated. I'm not going to play it for you, but that's how I felt at that time. It was just defeated. And really, the next like 2 to 3 months were among the worst of my life, even to this day. I was just depressed. And every time I would start to get out of it, I would work with her and just spiral right back down. And I don't think it was so much losing her, but just the hope, the thing, the pursuit that she represented what I wanted so bad, and it was just gone in like a second. Um, it was a couple months of that, and then over time, eventually God said something to me. He said, "I'm enough for you." And that really lifted me out of it. Just, just the realization that he like imprinted it on me that whether or not you get this girl, I'm enough. So, this is the sufficiency series. That's what sparked me coming was that life experience. See, um, so I'm going to talk about Jacob. Many of you guys are familiar with Jacob. And maybe you're not. So I'll just talk about it a little bit if you aren't. He was literally born grasping his older brother's heel. And so that's what Jacob means, he who grasps. And that really characterized his life. He spent his life in pursuit. And the thing that he really wanted was blessing, which is a good thing, right? But the problem was he did it in his own control, under his own means. And sometimes he used manipulation and deceit to even get that thing. Um, and in doing that, he ended up cheating his brother out of his birthright, and then later cheating him out of his father's blessing, the blessing for the oldest son. And so when he found out, he was really mad and wanted to kill him. So Jacob had to run. And so in running, his dad was like, "Go to your uncle, it's cool." And his dad even blessed him on the way out. And then on the way, God showed up in a dream. And he said, "I'm going to give you a huge family," which essentially is like the blessing of Abraham. "And also, I'm with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." So he has this here. He has God saying, "I'm with you until I'm done." But I guess it doesn't seem to really like sink into him because he goes to his uncle, and his uncle is like his match. He's just as savvy as he is. And then when Jacob wants to marry one of his daughters, he goes, "I'll work 7 years to marry your daughter." He does it, and then on the wedding night, somehow the uncle slips in an older daughter, and he marries the wrong gal. It's like, I don't know how you do that. But he woke up the next morning and he was like, wow, this is the wrong person. And so he's like, work 7 more years for me. And he does it and he gets the wife that he wanted. But he continues working for him. And the uncle changes his wages over and over again. So it was almost like Jacob had met his match, an equally as savvy person. But Jacob was still savvy. So he kind of manipulated the situation. He found a way to amass a great wealth under his uncle um, by breeding like the kind of defected sheep. Um, and then the next thing you know, he's super rich. He's got tons of sheep that are his. And then when his uncle finds out, he gets mad and he chases after him again. So here Jacob is again running for the second time in his life because of his savvy. And who does he run into? His brother Esau, the one who wanted to kill him like 20-something years ago when he saw him. And so the Bible literally says, in great fear and distress, he split his camp into two because he was thinking, oh, if Esau attacks one, then at least this one can get away. So he was just scrambling, really. But then he does something cool. He remembered when God showed up before, and so Jacob prays. So I think the prayer is going to be up on the screen there. Then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. I pointed it out because I think that's a really beautiful prayer. It's very honest. And he essentially says, God, this is what you told me you were going to do. This is what you've already done. And here I am, and it looks like these things are slipping away. Like, what's going on? Please save me. And I think that's a good way to pray. I think we should remember that. But Jacob still is a shifty guy. And so he devises a scheme. He says, I'm going to take everything I own and I'm going to set it up in gifts for Esau. So as he's approaching, he's going to get this awesome gift. And then he's going to come and get another one and another one. By the time he gets me, he'll be so pacified, he'll forget anything ever happened. And that's just him again taking his own destiny into his own hands. But thankfully, he said that he prayed that prayer, and God answers it. So let's go to the next scripture, Genesis 32. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, Let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So there it is again. The man asked him, What is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Jacob said, Please tell me your name. But he replied, Why do you ask my name? And then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, which means face of God, saying, It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. The sun rose above him, and he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. So here's Jacob running for the second time of his life, and literally everything he's owned is across the river. He's spent, he's at the end of his rope. It's all there. All his cards are on the table. And then here he is, he's left alone. And I think that's significant because how often is that where God meets us? So the man shows up, and the Bible calls him a man, and Jacob later surmises that it is God. Whether or not he's like an angel of the Lord or Jesus, or we don't really know, but we can be sure that it's a divine encounter. And it happens when Jacob is here at the end of his rope. Um, but when when God shows up, I think it's interesting. He shows up and he wrestles him immediately. And you would think if God was showing up, it would be like 2 doves swimming down or something, or like a breeze, and like a whisper, or even like an old man with like a bow staff who says like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. Like, here, take this staff." But it's a man who wrestles him, and I think that's important to point out because how often is our experience with God wrestling? How often is it a struggle? Um, and I think that that's okay, because when we're wrestling with God, we're communicating with God, and that relationship with God is being established and is being rooted, and ultimately, that's what satisfies. So uh, the man says, "Let me go," and like, have you ever thought that God would say, "Let me go"? Like God says, "Let me go." It's almost like He's saying, Jacob, how bad do you want this thing you've been pursuing your life? Like, how bad do you want me? How bad do you want the blessing? Thankfully, Jacob doesn't let him go, and he says, Bless me, thing he's wanted his whole life. But instead of blessing him, the man says, What's your name? Jacob, he who grasps, he who pursues. It's almost like he's bringing to mind, Jacob, so you want a blessing, right? How have you tried to do that your whole life up to this point? Through your own volition, through your own manipulation, and where has that got you? You're running for the second time for your life. He's bringing that to mind. This is who you were. But then he changes him. He says, You are Israel now, which means he struggles with God and man and overcomes. Um, he's saying, he's not saying like, you shouldn't have been pursuing blessing. Like the pursuit doesn't change, but the method changes. Is before you did it this way, but now you don't have to do it this way because I'm here. I'm with you. You're struggling with God and man, and you're overcoming. And so it's kind of my point for this whole thing. I think when we invite God into our struggle, things change. That might be the method, as it was in Jacob's case. That might be the pursuit itself. Maybe God says, what you're after isn't the right thing. Or maybe the method and the pursuit are fine, but your attitude is different. Maybe you moved out here to make movies and you just want to make a ton of money and spend it on yourself. But maybe God convicts you and says, minister to people. That's what's more important. So back to my story. So after I learned the sufficiency lesson with the girl, there was a lot of freedom in that. You could approach women and be like, I don't need you. I got God. But I went to a college at the time that had a 9-to-1 girl to guy ratio. Like no joke, there's so many girls everywhere. And so it probably wasn't a month or two before I had on my eye another girl, just falling back into the old ways. And but this girl I met her at Campus Crusade for Christ. She was a really strong Christian. She liked snowboarding. I was like, this is fine, right, God? But the funny thing was, as I tried to hang out with her and pursue her in my own whatever way, God kept saying no, and I was like, God, that doesn't make any sense. She's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. Why? And He just kept saying no, like don't. Um, and eventually, I listened, and just stopped. And so I think a good way to illustrate that is it was as if like this. So if picture, look at my fist. Like I was holding on to my pursuit like this. Like, oh, I want a girlfriend so bad. Jacob was like, oh, I want blessings so bad. And then God shows up, and it's a struggle, and it's like He's trying to, let go, like invite me in, let go. Eventually, you open your hand, hopefully, and I was able to say, okay, God. So when the next pursuit comes, like, oh, there's a girl, I can put it here and say, God, what do you think? And God says, no, don't do that one. Now I have a choice. I can go, no, like go back to the old way, clench it, but thankfully I didn't. I could open my hand. And Jacob did the same thing. He was holding on to blessing like this. God showed up and wrestled his hand open, and then it changed him. And I think what's really cool about this, God can take it even one step further. So pursuing things in life with an open hand is important. It's inviting God to the struggle. But if we go to Hebrews 11:12, oh, this was one I forgot to put on the screen. Sorry about that. I'll just read it to you. Because this series is about Hebrews, so I wanted to bring Hebrews into it. And Jacob is mentioned. And it says, this is the end of his life. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshiped as he leaned on top of his staff. So it's like, oh, I want blessing so bad. And then God says, no, give it to me. Open your hand. And now we go to the end of his life, and what is he doing? He's blessing the sons. So the thing he wanted so bad, more than anything, he can pursue with an open hand, and then God enables him to actually give it away. I think only God can do that, where the thing we want so bad, we eventually give away. And I think we can do that because that in the struggle, that relationship with God is established. And when we have that relationship with God, this thing isn't as important. So we get to the end of our lives, and, whether or not we got this, we got God. And that's ultimately what satisfies. And we see that again in this verse. I'll read it again. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshiped as he leaned on top of his staff. So he's leaning on his staff. You'll notice his hip was never healed. In that struggle with God, the man wrenched his hip. And you might think, like, oh, maybe God will heal him later. But no, he spends his whole life limping. And I think that's good because that scar was able to remind him of his encounter with God. And I think in our lives we can say the same thing. The scars that come from our struggle with God can serve as reminders of where we were and where we are now. And maybe not just scars, but sometimes we set up our own altars or our own symbols for that. I had my emo song, Defeated. And even though I don't like to go back and look at it, I can and say, man, look where I was and look where I am now. Um, and so there's Two things I want to do this morning. The first is invite God in to your struggle. I want you to think about what you're pursuing in this life and look for God and see where He is. And if He's not there, invite Him in. Open up your hand. Maybe even do this during worship if it comes to that. But I do want to say one other thing about that. You might be thinking, that's easy for you to say, Rick. You married a girl who likes Taco Bell. Like, you got what you wanted. Um, Maybe I've been waiting 20 years and I have invited God in and I'm still struggling and, I haven't got it yet. Like, what do I do now? Um, First, I say, yeah, that's really tough. Some of us have different struggles with God. Um, I would say persevere. If you read the rest of that chapter, rest of Hebrews, perseverance is a common theme. And even in the 11th chapter, it talks about a lot of the heroes of the Bible who are marked by their perseverance. But the other thing I want to say about that is that the sufficiency of God, it's found in our relationship with God, but it's also found in the church. Um, so going with that same illustration, like let's say you got a guy who just has been waiting forever and he wants kids and he wants a wife and it just hasn't happened. But maybe you're over here and you have kids and you have a family. Um, can you invite him into your home to watch your kids? Can he be like an honorary uncle or something, or like a godfather? Um, just can you fulfill those needs, the lack in his life? Can you be the sufficiency of God for the church? And so that's the second thing I want you to do. First, invite God into your struggle. And the second, examine your role in the church and see where you can fulfill a need, where you can help someone else experience God's sufficiency, because He is enough. So the band come up, I'll say a prayer, and we can worship God. Thanks for this word, God. Thanks for just the opportunity to speak it. Um, and thank you that you're a really good God, and that in our struggles, we can count on that there's good in our struggle. We can see that, and we can see that you're there. And I just pray you really imprint on our hearts that no matter what we're pursuing, that our relationship with you is ultimately what satisfies. Bless this time of worship and bless everyone here and the rest of our Sundays. In Jesus' name, amen.